This is Prince George's County Executive Rashawn Baker, and you're listening to the Maryland Crabs Podcast.
Live from a grungy kitchen table located in Annapolis, Maryland's scenic and historic capital, it's the Maryland Crabs Podcast. With each episode, your hosts, Tim Hamilton, John Frenay, and the occasional guest will dive in and pick apart the stuff that really matters most to you. We're too lazy to actually solve any of these problems, but we can definitely stir the pot. From schools, politics, parking in the fire lane, to those horrible people who drive BMWs. And here with this week's episode, live from the kitchen table, Tim Hamilton and John Frenay.
It's Maryland Crabs time. I'm Tim Hamilton, here with John Frenay. He opened up his mouth to say, "It's John," and I beat him to the punch.
That's it. That's me. Other side of the table.
So we have a very special guest today. It's tax time. Everyone's thinking about taxes. So we have Senor Peter Franchot, who is the big man when it comes to Maryland taxes. He'll be here. And so we'll get to him in a few minutes. We're going to do a little housekeeping things up front a little bit.
Hey, I wanted to mention, a lot of people have sent me like emails and texts and stuff like that saying, "Hey, dude, man, I'm not hearing you on R&R anymore in the morning."
Yeah, you have been around the house a lot more lately.
Yep, that's it. We don't live together, Tim. But, you know, but yeah.
Yet.
No, basically, I got canned from R&R. It wasn't because I said shit or anything like that on the air.
Sexual harassment.
It's no. Actually, at the end of I guess it was the end of February. Got called in after the show one morning. They just said that they were going to be making some changes to the morning show, and then they didn't include me, and which is cool. And I've subsequently found out that the change to the morning show was that it didn't include me.
Everyone who's still on the morning show, raise their hand. Not so fast, John. Put your hand down.
Yeah, so basically that's it. So the stint at WRNR was great. I do miss it. I had a lot of fun there, and
I feel bad. I always felt like I should have listened.
Well,
but it's really early though.
You know, it was a lot of fun while it lasted. But if you're so inclined to listen to me, hey, thank God for the Maryland Crabs Podcast, huh? Yeah,
well, we don't have to get up early. We can drink beer while doing it.
That's true.
And we do.
That's true. That last one with Alex Blind was great.
We got a lot of response from the one from Alex because when you're talking about parking, it's not sexy, but that actually turned into a lot of fun. And Alex was a great sport. A ton of downloads on that one, actually, like right out the gate. That one surprised me. Not because Alex wasn't great, but because it was, it can be kind of a dry subject, but I think it hit home with a lot of people.
Tapped into a little bit of a hot spot there, that's for sure.
Well, and I still contend. I mean, we talk about that. I don't know if there's a parking problem per se downtown. I think a lot of it is organizational, but I mean, there's times where it's going to be kind of tough. But SP Plus, I think they have by the time you hear this, or I don't know when they're having that meeting, that SP
tonight.
Plus. Oh, is that tonight?
Well, I say tonight. That was
2 days ago. So you're going to be time traveling right now. So, a lot of I still contend that's not a study. It's pretty much a wish list for what they want, but their business too. So I mean, I guess I can't be too critical, but
that is true.
I get irritated paying that fee on that app. Drives me nuts.
That's true. I remember when we started this podcast last September, we initially talked about doing it, I think, monthly, and then you talked me into doing it
every other week. Right.
And then something hit the fan, and we needed to go every week.
Right, for temporarily.
Yeah. I mean, we know how that worked out, but I
actually broached the subject with him the other day of doing twice a week, and he hung up on me.
That's exactly about it. Well, we did have the crab cakes, which is a lot of fun, and we're going to be doing a lot more of those too.
Yeah, they're experimental, and John did a great job with them. And I think we're going to coming with the Maryland Film Festival. We're going to be doing more Annapolis, Maryland. What's in Maryland, John?
But there is a Maryland Film Festival.
Oh. We should do it with him, too.
Yeah.
But the Annapolis Film Festival, so John did some interviews with him last week, and he's going to have some more coming up, and I may have to squeeze in a few, too.
So, we'll just short little things that don't demand an entire episode, so that'll be cool. But, I mean, going back to the whole thing, when you decided you needed to do it every week, sort of put some pressure on to get guests in. But I'm psyched. We got a bunch coming up.
We've got a good lineup. We're getting phone calls now. That's the nice thing, is that they're calling us. That means that we have to put very little effort in, and we're all about that, because I am fundamentally lazy, John.
That's right.
But we have...
I got a call the other night from the White House out of a 202 number wanting to come on. I hung up. I said, "Man, we don't talk to no clothing people."
I don't get it.
The White House used to be a client of mine.
Oh, yes.
And the White House and Black Market, when I owned my travel agency. And it was the most impressive thing in the world when they would call into the office and there'd be a client in there.
Oh, because...
Hey, the White House is online, too. It was like... Shh. It's our little secret. But we do have good stuff.
Yeah, so we talked to the people from the National Cannabis Festival, which was a lot of fun. That's going to be coming up soon. That's the 22nd, right?
April 22nd at RFK.
I have a friend of mine who owns a food truck, and I mentioned that to him yesterday, and he got all excited. He goes, "You have to get me there." He goes, he sells the mini donuts. It's Glazy Days Donuts. So if you haven't tried them, you got to find that truck. It's amazing. But he said, "You have to get me at the Cannabis Festival."
I was very surprised. They left me a number of posters and cards to sort of distribute around Annapolis because they don't know the area too well. And I've been surprised at the number of people that are so receptive to taking it. Vape shops are like sucking them down. They're like, "Oh yeah, dude, bring it in."
Oh, boy.
You know, not Sin Fronteras, but Caliente. There's Zoo Coffee.
It's a new age. It really is. You know, it's not the stigma it used to have. I mean, just there's so many things that have changed in our life that in the last 5 years, maybe 10 years, that are just that when we were kids were just so taboo, and this is just one of them. I think, you know, when we said, "Do you see full legalization in 5 years?" I think they both kind of snorted and said, "No, way before that." I mean, once they're dominoes, once the states see the revenues, they're going to start kind of collapsing.
Ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching.
Right.
But definitely mark your calendars for April 6th, Thursday, for when we talk to Caroline and Kevin.
That was a fun one. That really was a fun one. It's sometimes you get guests on here, and we've never, and I'm not just kissing ass, we've never had a guest where afterwards we're just like, "Oh, geez, what were we thinking?" Actually, all the guests have been fantastic, but there's some that have just been that totally get the concept and have been absolutely fantastic, and they were ones that were just really a lot of fun to talk to. But we have some upcoming guests that we haven't spoken to yet, but are slated right now because John's been hard. He's a little Julie McCoy kind of booking these guests, and you have so for those of you who are all fired up about Crystal Springs, good news, there is no Crystal Springs. However, they got all sneaky and changed their name. So
they certainly did, and we're going to be talking later on at the end of the month. I don't know whether it's going to air in April or whether it'll air in May, early May, but one of those two. But we're going to be talking to Larry, who is the CEO of the National Lutheran Community Services, which is the downscale developer of the Villages at Providence Point, which is the new name for Crystal Spring.
That was the original name for Annapolis. No, it was. Yeah, the Annapolis is originally called Providence.
Oh, really?
Yep.
I learned something new there.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, that I'm really looking forward to that. They have had a couple of public meetings on that. They've come out and they tried to engage the public. And, you know, from my point of view, and I tend to be a little bit more pro-development, I think, than you are, Tim.
I'm not anti-development. I'm anti-development when it makes my ride home a lot longer.
Yeah, which is
I'm
fine,
not kidding.
But I think, you know, it's funny. I've seen some of the things that have come out since they've had the name change and the downscale, and it seems like some of the opponents are just like, the only acceptable answer is no.
Yeah, well, the environmental groups, they're never going to accept that development of any kind.
Yeah, they're not going to do anything. I mean, you can't.
And I'm not banging on environmentalists. I consider myself one, but I'm talking about there's a breed of rabid, you know, no development moving forward. We want a full moratorium, and that's just not reasonable. We're an urban area that we have to establish a tax base, and people do have a right to use their property. But you know, my point is, I'm not anti-development, but you have a right to develop your property, but when it starts to affect the community at large around you, then I think that we should have a say.
Right.
That's that. And so it sounds like they've kind of backed off the monstrosity, and it was a monstrosity that was going to be there significantly. So I think that this is still going to be a pretty heavy campaign issue moving forward, and the campaigns start to heat up. So we're going to have the candidates are all going to come back, and again, if you're running for any office anywhere in Maryland,
right,
and if you want to come on the show,
yeah, local, statewide, countywide,
if
you want to come on.
If you're in Frederick, if you're in Salisbury, if you're in Baltimore, if you're in our own backyard here, then we'll absolutely love to have you on. I think we only have one mayoral candidate that we have not had on, which is Nevin, and we're certainly reaching out to him because we want to welcome him. We've had a few people who've emailed us and saying that they want to see him.
And we also want to get into the aldermanic stuff because Annapolis is the next local election that's coming up in 2017.
Yeah, so if you're in Montgomery County, and we do have some in Montgomery County, and you're listening, we know that the local stuff may get a little bit boring, but we thrive on it. So, and we'll get around to you guys pretty soon. But we also have email from Anthony Brown's folks, Congressman Anthony Brown, who represents the 4th
I get all these numbers confused.
Yeah, so
they change all the time.
Prince George's County and and it snakes over into our county. That jigsaw puzzle that is Maryland.
Right.
But
no, Anthony Brown is the former lieutenant governor with Martin O'Malley.
Right, and they want to reach out, and we want to talk to him about a bunch of things, especially from a national side, because we don't delve into that too much because there's enough podcasts and enough people who are kind of covering that. But a couple big stories this week that are ongoing, and I don't think they're going to resolve themselves by the time this airs in 2 days. But for example, the big news today is that Jeff Sessions says that sanctuary cities and states, that it looks like they're going to try and aggressively figure out some ways
to cut their funding,
to cut the federal funding and federal grants. And I think that's you're in the billions at that point, obviously, but that becomes a problem when, as a matter of fact, I think New York, there was some buzz right there that New York City said that if their federal fundings were cut, that maybe they would cut back on their protection of Trump Towers. And it was just, now you're getting into the pissing match that you get into when you have the feds in the states and the municipalities bang heads. But, there's some concerns in Maryland, which tends to be a liberal state, and there's some legislation here in Annapolis that some would point at and call sanctuary city status, and I would disagree to a large extent, as would I think most people and the proponent of the legislation. But that's going to be a big story. And
I'll tell you also with that state delegate Herb McMillan had contacted me too, and I didn't tell you this, but he wants to
communication is key, John. Our counselor told us this.
That's fine. But Delegate McMillan wants to talk about the Trust Act, which ties in with that sanctuary city there, because he had said that this really is creating a sanctuary state for Maryland with this bill that was recently passed by the House of Delegates. So he's got some very strong opinions, and he wants to profess them.
Well, I think the bill, and or the legislation at least, what they're proposing, it makes it easier for cities to kind of opt out of enforcement, federal enforcement, from what I understand. So it's
cooperating with this. Well,
so it doesn't make Maryland
cooperating with federal authorities on immigration issues.
And so I don't think it makes Maryland a sanctuary state per se, but it gives municipalities more power to do so if they want. I've got to read more about it, but that's my understanding.
Well, let's wait till Delegate McMillan gets in and we'll talk about it.
So, and I think he'll have a couple access to client too, which is always good for us. The other big thing that happened was that it looks like the EPA, at least the budget right now, in the budget, the president right now, a few minutes ago, he signed executive legislation or executive orders that rolled back a lot of the executive orders that were issued by President Obama about clean air and clean factories. And so he's rolling a lot of the climate change executive orders back. And so it's very significant. But where it affects us particularly is that there's $30 million of federal money that goes to the Chesapeake Bay and cleaning up the bay and maintaining, and it looks like that the current budget does not include that, so we would be out all that money, and that is pretty significant because the bay's been making a lot of significant improvements in the last 10, 12 years. I think Reagan. Yeah, I think Reagan was the one who actually first started the program. He started with, I think, $3 million and has climbed since then. But I think and it's funny, you get the temperature. This is my problem too, and I'm going to go back to the comments I see at the end of news stories. I see that in the Capitol, and one of the comments that I've seen from all the conservatives on the Capitol commenting board, which is pretty much all the comments now, it was as they kind of follow and defend whatever the president does, that their job is to draw a circle around that arrow. And what they've been saying is that, well, now it's up to local municipalities, and it's up to volunteer groups, and it's up to local groups to fill in the gaps. And my argument is, you're talking about the largest estuary in North America. That's it's 400 miles from tip to tip. It's massive. You're not going to have you need that federal money to do that. So now it's not a done deal from what I understand, but it doesn't look good. But we'd like to talk to Anthony Brown about how that's going to affect us. So we have some exciting things coming up, right? Some exciting guests. You have us pretty busy.
We do. Now we just got to get them in here and talk to them.
Yeah, I still want some more drinking ones.
And anybody listening across the state too. By the way, we've got a rolling case and a car, so we can travel.
We can be anywhere.
We can be anywhere.
My wife lets me out of the house, and the one I'm the most excited about coming up. I will not tell you who it is, but you Montgomery County kiddos and Prince George's kiddos, I think, and John is totally ambivalent towards this because he doesn't get this. But I talked to a certain Captain 20 who's a little interested in coming in on the show in June when he's coming into town because he lives in Florida now. So John just stared at me when I told him, and I couldn't sleep for 2 nights because we're gonna have Captain 20 on. I'm serious. I can't tell you how excited I am about this. This is fantastic. This is my childhood.
I'm just going to sit there and just like, what?
You can get us drinks. That's your little job that day. But I'm all excited. It's Richard Dysel. He's going to be here. But I mean,
you know who we might be able to get on. Do you remember the Kung Fu school song that was
June Ray?
Here? Yeah. Do you know who wrote that?
Yes. Nils Lofgren?
Yeah.
I did know that. So I don't know why. Someone told me that. Sean O'Neill might have said that, or someone.
Yeah. Paul is a friend of his.
Oh, we got to get that guy.
So we might
the Junri theme song.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny. It'd be awkward. We'll sing that song and then laugh, and then we got like 58 minutes to fill. Let's sing it again.
Nobody bothers me, or something along those lines, right?
Nobody bother me either. And I got to do the wink. Is that racist? Probably is.
I don't know.
On that racist note, let's go and listen to our chat with Peter Franchot. I'm here with John Fernay. I'm here with Peter Franchot, who is the Maryland State Comptroller, and I'm a little nervous because I have not done my taxes yet. And my wife told me to gather the things together, and we're doing it in a completely legal and above-board way. Just so you know, if it comes across your desk, sir, there's no problems with it.
Yeah, if the name Hamilton comes across, just say, yeah, that's fine.
Fine.
I haven't prepared my own taxes, so,
I think it'll be okay.
all of us that owe the state money tend to wait until April 18th this year.
Well, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
I know you got a busy day today. You're testifying tonight, or you're going to some sort of big meeting, some important thing that important people do?
Well, you would think so, but, I'm lucky that I'm the state's comptroller. I'm elected by the people of the state, and I'm honored to be the comptroller, and you guys are, in a way, are my bosses. You pay my salary, so I'm happy to be here with you.
And we have a performance evaluation here. We're going to talk
okay, go ahead.
A lot of people are confused as to the comptroller. It's a fancy name. I mean, obviously,
it's French.
You're big in the name of taxes. I mean, that's where most people recognize you from. But what all does the comptroller's office do for the state of Maryland?
Well, tax collection is part of it, and it's the one that I interface with Marylanders most on, because we process 3.2 million tax returns a year. So that's a big responsibility.
You just processed just over 3 million a couple weeks ago or a week ago.
No, we just passed 1 million, so we're a third of the way through, and we're always holding our breath because we want the system to work well, mostly because we return $2.5 billion each year in about 6 weeks in refunds. And that's a huge chunk of money. It's cash that flows right into the economy. And many Maryland families are counting on that to pay for various expenses. So we don't want to screw it up.
Without a doubt. I'll tell you.
So you kind of split your time between being a very unpopular office for a couple months and then you're very popular, depending on which way the money's going.
Yeah. Well, I am lucky in that I have a job that I've defined as being the chief fiscal officer / watchdog, where I'm on the side of the taxpayers. We try to provide good customer service, get their refunds back. For those folks that owe us money, we do the job of collecting the taxes because that's what allows the state to be great. But for whatever reason, I've managed to thread the needle where I am, I think, a uniquely popular elected official just because I show up, I'm responsive to people, I believe in customer service, I'm a fiscal moderate, and I don't believe in partisanship.
And you got schools to stay open past Labor Day.
School after Labor Day, that's it. Yeah.
You were immensely popular in my house, my friend.
That's
true. One of those great issues. It's not a Democratic issue or a Republican issue. It's just a common sense idea that helps the state's economy, and teachers and kids love it, as do families. And we all started school after Labor Day, and, except for Tim, we all turned out pretty good.
Yeah,
I'm getting there.
I'll tell you, I've never talked to anybody in the state that has gotten a refund that hasn't been ecstatic about how fast it comes and how quickly you guys and efficiently you guys handle that.
Well,
we're 6 days.
Yeah, we rely on technology. It's 2.1 business days on average from receipt of your electronically filed return. 90% of the returns are filed electronically now. 2.1 business days receiving your tax return, putting your money back in your bank account. That's pretty cool, I think, because it's almost instantaneous, and it's in contrast to a lot of states that take weeks or months to get refunds back.
Well, it is. I know in Pennsylvania, it took a long time for it to come out, relatively speaking, and certainly you get spoiled in Maryland when it shows up.
Yeah, but I really like the job that I've got, and I've managed to connect with most Marylanders around the concept of customer service and common sense. I'm not probably the favorite of the Democratic Party bosses, such as they are. There aren't very many left. I'm a proud Democrat, but I'm not under anyone's thumb.
That makes sense. Now, we were talking earlier. How many years have you been in office? You're
This is my 10th year.
10th year? Okay.
Yeah.
So this is your third.
Who would have thought it?
This is your third
I've become
term.
what I ran against, an entrenched incumbent. And I'm lucky to have the job, as I said.
You know that Maryland, I think, from the statistic I read, we have the third most entrenched legislature in the country, I think behind Louisiana and New Mexico, something like that.
Texas is in there too, I think, isn't it?
I don't know, but I mean, but we've had a lot of people who are. 10 years is nothing. You're a newcomer with that 10 years.
Well, I'm not actually, because I spent 20 years in the legislature, so I'm a veteran guy. But the thing that I think people recognize in me is that I'm independent, and what they don't like are the two parties just walking in lockstep against each other and constantly squabbling. And
that's the word I used. Actually, we were driving over here. We were talking about both we did research, and I said the same thing. I said you're not in lockstep with the Democratic machine, and it is a Democratic machine. But I mean, you've ticked off the right people, I think, from time to time, right?
Well. If Mike Miller could redistrict me to Pennsylvania, I'm sure he would. But that's okay. It's what people want right now. They're thirsty for folks being able to work together and just get the job done. And I mentioned the Taxpayer Protection Act. That's a bill that I put in last year. The legislature played games with me and decided to send a message, I guess. They didn't articulate it very well, but they killed the bill for no good reason. And now they're probably going to do it again this year. And
can you tell us about the bill, just for people
this
listening?
is a crucial piece of legislation to protect taxpayers in the state. It allows my office to protect the public from this increasing number of financial criminals who are filing fraudulent tax returns using Social Security numbers that they steal.
We got nailed with that. My wife did. And
did she?
It took us 2 years to get our money back from the feds.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that.
You guys are fine.
Yeah.
Thanks for that.
Yeah. Well, we want to be responsive to Tim because he's interviewing me today. No, I'm kidding. We are
the guy who could audit me.
Yeah. We, this legislation is very important to us because we have, and during my tenure, we've headed off 76,000 fraudulent returns, i.e., we haven't sent the money out. It totals about $174 million in fraudulent tax refund requests.
So that's like, I did some quick math, that's like 3%.
Yeah, it's a huge amount, and we haven't been able to prosecute people because we don't have there's a glitch in the law of the state which does not give us the investigative authority over income tax fraud that you would think we
Your
had.
department, you mean.
So what would you need to do? If I was filing a fraudulent return, would you have to go to the Attorney General and present your case?
Well, no, it wouldn't be you necessarily. We're not down in that individual type situation. We're talking about somebody from South Florida that we identify who's putting in a couple of thousand fraudulent requests, e-filing them.
Right.
We block them because we have very sophisticated filters, but we want to be able to subpoena that person's computer records and bring them to justice if, in fact, they're guilty of what we think is rampant fraud.
So they're doing like a Bridget from Card Services thing where they're just blanket hitting everybody.
Yeah,
but are you handcuffed now as far as that goes?
Well, I'm not handcuffed as far as not processing them and not sending the refund out. That's a discretionary decision made by me. I have no authority to go out and say to
the
them.
law enforcement.
So if I'm a bad guy in Florida doing this, the only downside to getting caught is that I wouldn't get the fraudulent money at this point?
Correct.
For the most part?
Correct. And what most of them do is just send me another 1,000 fraudulent returns.
And hope that those ones go through.
Hope that they go through.
Get a couple of them.
It's a little bit like Willie Sutton. Instead of, he famously said, I robbed banks because that's where the money. Well, what if Willie Sutton walked into a bank and the vault was open for him by the employees? He was invited to go in and take whatever he wanted. And then, by the way, he could walk out without being arrested.
Okay, so on its face, it seems like common sense legislature, but legislature.
All right, Mike Miller, Mike Bush, that's absurd.
So what's the opposition to it?
Well, the opposition is you'll have to ask them because none of it makes sense. Everybody who testifies at the hearings this year and last year, but this year particularly, we had Governor Hogan, we had Attorney General Frosch, we had me and others all submitting testimony, the whole private sector, so nobody disagreed with it. And you'll just have to go and ask the Senate President and the Speaker why, for some reason that is everybody's very
that
quiet
just
about
seems like
it
such
doesn't
a
pass.
common sense thing that you need to have the power behind you to do it. And even if it's something that you have to go through the Attorney General or work in conjunction with the Attorney General to do it, I can see that. But
well, we have to because he's the prosecutor. But what's lacking in this, the missing piece of the puzzle, is anyone with expertise being able to prepare a case for going after the fraud should the Attorney General or the county prosecutor decide that it merited it. We're not the prosecutors, but we're the only people in town that understand the law and we understand the fraud schemes, and we're begging for help, and we end up with, at the end of the year, everybody kind of pulls their pockets out and says, geez, we don't know what happened. Well, I know what happened, but I'm not going to get into it with the legislature.
One of the other things that you do is liquor tax?
Yeah, we have regulatory authority over alcohol, petroleum, and tobacco. We have police powers. We have 35 sworn law enforcement. All we're asking is an extension of those existing tools to us so we can bring some of these financial fraudsters into court. We're never going to catch all of them because it's technology based.
Sure.
And but if we could get some of them and come up with some consequence to their illegal behavior, that would be beneficial for the state. But you'll have to go ask the Senate President and the Chairman of the House Judiciary Committee. I talk to them, and say, what's the problem? And you just have to hear what comes out of that.
How do we compare to other states when it comes to regulatory or police powers such as that?
I haven't really compared us to other states, but I can't imagine other states' comptrollers' offices not having basic subpoena power over income tax fraud. And that's essentially what we're asking for. And it's a big problem. It's getting bigger. The IRS is trying to struggle with it. We are recognized as one of the top states in the country for fighting fraud, i.e. identifying it and not sending the refund out. We've gotten all sorts of national awards for that. What's missing is this prosecutorial follow-up. I describe it as a battle between the good guys and the bad guys, between the police, the cops, and the robbers. And right now the legislature is siding with the robbers. I'm siding with the cops, and for the life of me, I can't understand why we can't do something to protect Marylanders like yourself, Tim, who have had their identity stolen. And
it was hellacious. I can't even begin to tell you what we had to go through, and that was the IRS. I mean, I think I'd read somewhere where you said, look, if someone calls our department, they're going to get an answer, someone's going to answer right away. And you said, I think it was in Big Weekly, your interview with them, where if you call the IRS, it can be hours or days. And it was, I probably put 100 hours into this in trying to get it cleared up, and it wasn't our fault. And it was we are one of millions of people who went through that. It was the same sort of thing as that they take Social Security numbers and they just flood the IRS with these returns. And I would call them.
There are 10,000 people like you right now in the state of Maryland that are in your exact same frustrating situation. And
at least it sounds like you guys are responsive. The IRS was not, unless they're listening to this, in which case they were awesome.
Yeah, but the key thing is, how do you prevent it in the future? And you go to the legislature and say, here's a common sense idea. It's not Republican. It's not Democratic. Nobody's opposed to it. And you guys, I guess, they've got something else they're trying to communicate. Last year, they killed it on the last day of the session. This year, it looks like they're going to do the same thing.
Is there a business interest that would be opposed to this, or maybe even another governmental department that maybe doesn't want to relinquish some sort of authority, or is it just...
No, I think it's much more specific than that.
Is it because it's you?
No, I don't think it's necessarily me. I think there are a lot of people that have... connections down there in the legislature that, are not on the right side of this issue. And when I say that the legislature, unfortunately, has put itself on the bad guy side, I mean it.
Are you going to have this resubmitted next year?
Well, we'll see what happens. Crossover is next week, and we'll see whether it gets pushed through. Hopefully it will. I've spoken to everybody and asked them to do the right thing.
And for those that don't know, crossover is the day when the bills in the two houses, the parallel bills cross over into the opposite chamber to see whether they move on to be a law.
Yeah,
Correct?
I mean, all the public needs to know is there are good guys and bad guys in this. We're on the side of the good guys. These folks holding it up in the legislature are on the side of the bad guys, and some of them actually tout that. It's hard for me to believe. And the only people we're trying to protect are Maryland taxpayers. So do the job people put you over there to do, and give us the tools so that we can protect folks. I'm not complaining. I'm not like, oh, gee whiz, gosh, why are they doing this to me? I'm not wringing my hands over it. I'm just saying this is what the public expects, and it's not happening.
How do you detect? I mean, obviously you've got filters and algorithms and whatnot. I mean, what are the warning signs on a fraudulent return? Do you know?
A bunch from like one IP address, I imagine. If you get like 50,000.
No, there are a bunch of very specific things, and if I told you, I'd have to kill you.
Okay.
Tell them.
No, this is
my life's not
this
too
is
good right
super.
now.
Yeah, this is super
I've
secret.
been wanting to host this myself anyway.
It's very sophisticated algorithms that we apply now. We used to be able 10 years ago would pull 100 returns out according to our filters, and 10 of them were fraudulent. Now we've gotten to the point where we pull 100 returns out, and 90 of them are fraudulent. And that's because
your filters are so tight,
and you learn from the thieves what they're doing, and then you try to stay one step ahead of them.
It's just an arms war, because as soon as you stop them, they develop new methods, huh?
And particularly because, as you said, Tim, there's no downside. The worst that can happen is they don't get money.
Is it also international, or is this strictly a national thing?
Some of it comes out of the Ukraine. I'm less interested, obviously,
Romania.
in prosecuting those guys because they're out of the country. But
and how does that work across state lines? I don't understand. So if you find someone who's down in Boca and they're doing this from like a boiler room or something, can you have them extradited, or you go after the LLC that's probably set up?
Well, we would probably, in that case, work with our sister states and with the IRS. They have a criminal division. The whole point is nobody is knowledgeable about the income tax law in the state like we are. Nobody else is. The Attorney General is involved with other matters, and these local prosecutors don't have the time to focus on this. We do, and we can get the goods on these folks, but we need a subpoena power, and we need the authorization in statute, and it's not given. And last year it wasn't given. This year it's questionable whether we're going to get it. I hope we do. We'll find out in a week. And by the time this is airing, you'll probably have a pretty good idea whether one of the bills is going to pass. Mm-hmm. But it's very frustrating because I am in the middle of it. And yet I'm not the person that's affected. It's the 10,000 Marylanders like you who are victims of this stuff. It's the countless people in the future that are going to be penalized. And for the legislature to look at me blankly and say, we're going to be on the side of the robbers who are trying to steal money from the state and mess up the lives of citizens, and we're not going to listen to you, even though you and the law enforcement community and everybody in the private sector, all the accountants, all the groups of folks that have that are affected by this, everybody's testified in favor of it.
Well, I find in a lot of these situations that when you have, I'd say, governmental institutions or law enforcement, for lack of a better word, but the technology that the bad guys have moves so much faster that the people in those individual departments say, hey, we see this, what's going on. I have several friends who are cops, and they'll tell me what's going on the streets as far as crime and, when it comes to drug distribution or weapons. And they're saying it's moving so much faster than the laws do because the people in the legislature, they're not at ground level. Then they don't see what's happening. So we can describe to them what's happening, and they don't believe it because in their world, they're from the outside looking in, they just have no concept. And we're the ones who are watching as the criminals evolve and they move fast.
I think it's a fair point, and the criminals are very sophisticated.
But that's the point. You understand the sophistication, and because you see it as it plays itself out. And a legislator who's representing, Beltsville or something, I mean, that's not on their radar because they have so many different things, so they don't understand how important this is and how critical it is.
Let me boil it down. The legislature should do their job.
Let's take a break here real quick. We'll be right back.
When a ring from the United States Naval Academy comes into Zachary's for a center stone, it always makes us wonder, where's this one going? Where's this one been? A nuclear sub in the North Atlantic? A carrier deck in the South Pacific? The moon? 52 astronauts are Academy graduates, from Iwo Jima to Okinawa, Corregidor to the Coral Sea, Midway to the Persian Gulf, Congress to the White House. These rings go where America goes. 73 that went to war were awarded the Medal of Honor. But wherever they go, wherever they may serve, our admiration goes with them.
Zachary's. Online at zacharysjewelers.com. More than a jewelry store, a jeweler.
In 2015, Anne Arundel Medical Center had to transfer more than 1,100 mental health patients to a mental health facility outside of this area for care because the facilities they needed do not exist in our own community. These patients and families are our friends, loved ones, and co-workers, and they deserve better. Join Anne Arundel Medical Center and presenting sponsor M&T Bank on Saturday, April 29th in Annapolis at AAMC's Denim and Diamonds Bash. Denim and Diamonds is a wonderful evening under the stars, featuring fabulous cuisine, gourmet food trucks, silent auction, and dancing, all to support expanding mental health care in our community. It's an evening of great fun, but it's not just a party. For tickets and sponsorship, visit aamcdenimanddiamonds.org.
And we're back here. We're here on 80, and I forget the name of the street, but it's a big, beautiful building at the end of Rowell Boulevard, which is the Comptroller's office. And we're here with Comptroller of the State of Maryland, Peter Franchot. We've been talking about the Taxpayer Protection Act, which looks like it may not make it through this legislative season, which is unfortunate because we learned that it was there's no downside to trying to scam Maryland out of money.
Well, often when you have people who are proposing legislation and they lay it out very simply, and you're just kind of like, well, that seems pretty no-brainer, but then you find out, oh, here's the twist to it. I don't see any twist to this one. Anyone who wants to stop me getting ripped off again, I'm all
it's
for
a little down in the weeds, and I sympathize with your listeners if they've had to put up with us for this whole podcast on taxpayer protection.
It's like my mom and his girlfriend.
I think, if nothing else, you're tenacious. We had mentioned that earlier before we started, and I know that you have had a thing about air conditioners in schools in Baltimore County for quite a few years.
And we were just talking about that. We said that, you're the comptroller, so you deal with taxes and money, but you've also strayed into other areas, and you've had a lot of influence in those areas. We were joking about before about the school start times, and he's right about the air conditioners.
Well, that ties in with you've got a seat at the Board of Public Works, and it's you, the governor, and the treasurer, correct?
Correct.
And obviously that controls a lot of the purse strings going through to the schools, and is that correct to assume that's where your interest comes from in the schools?
Yes, and we vote billions of dollars of contracts every year in the Board of Public Works, and you're right, it's a unique panel. Governor's elected independently. He's a Republican. I'm elected independently. I'm a Democrat, and then there's a treasurer elected by the legislature. So unlike other bodies like the Board of Estimates in Baltimore City, which is under the control of the mayor, because she appoints 3 of the 5 members of that, this Board of Public Works is a really unique. No other state has one like it. You need 2 votes to pass these big contracts. It's tremendously important to the public because it gives some transparency and some accountability. Not a lot because we're dealing in politics here, but it gives them a
view. It doesn't give you a lot of place to hide. I mean, you've got 3 people on the board. I mean, it's...
No, it's a great body because it's got tremendous authority. It was formed years ago when the state went bankrupt to oversee the finances of the state. We vote on all the school construction money. So the Severna Park High School was something that I championed a couple of years ago when it was kind of lost in the political ebb and flow. And on the school air conditioning up in Baltimore County and Baltimore City, because we vote on the money for the new schools, I was able to get involved in the proper climate control, and glad I did because tens of thousands of kids in that area are going to get air conditioning and also heat during the winter, and we're using Anne Arundel County as the model because they have this great chief operating officer of the school system, Alex
Sachnowitz.
Yeah, I call him Alex, Mr.
Yes.
Alex, because I can't pronounce his last name, but he's the one who pioneered the fact that you don't have to have the kids sit in unair-conditioned classrooms until a new school is built. You can put in a box unit. and it's worked beautifully in Anne Arundel as a bridge to.
And my kids have that, and they went to Hillsmere, and they had the box units. I mean, they didn't have it in the
learning
cafeteria or the box cars that are out back.
So this is something that's been very beneficial to them, particularly kids that have special needs go crazy when the temperature goes up into the 90s.
I go crazy when it goes up in the 90s, in all fairness.
Yeah, so we're making progress on that. Baltimore City is air conditioning 4 of their remaining high schools with box units. Baltimore County is still a holdout, but we're pretty much demanding that they do the right thing and take care of the teachers and the kids that are. Unlike Anne Arundel County, where almost every student has an air-conditioned classroom or a heated classroom during the winter, in the Baltimore region, that's been left off, and every part of the state has air conditioning, except Garrett County out in the western part. Well, all they have to do is open the window.
Yeah,
because it's
Deep Creek land.
They only get a couple of days of summer out there.
Well, it seems like an odd crusade, as did the start school later.
Yep.
And by later, I don't mean the later in the day, later in the year, for the comptroller to champion. And I don't have kids in Baltimore County schools, but certainly I think there's a lot of people that do thank you for that and the starting school later after Labor Day.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Which makes, again, to me, makes a lot of sense. I know to the school districts it didn't. I have to think they're probably hoping that this snow that's coming down is going to be just like doomsday, and then they can come and say, "I told you so," and we ran out of days or something.
Yeah, my kids were livid about this because they go to public school, and we got a lot of friends who go to St. Mary's, and the St. Mary's, they go to school 5 days a week or 5 days a year, but they would get out super early in the summer, and then they would go back super late. So with pushing it past Labor Day, for once, my kids were actually going to go back after the kids at St. Mary's, and then I guess the Archdiocese then pushed it back, so now they go back at the same time. It's going to be very popular,
thanks to Governor Hogan. It's now the law of the land. The legislature looked at it year after year and treated it like gum on the bottom of their shoe. And
it's an interesting one, too, because I'll tell you, this was, if you go online, if you go into the Anne Arundel County Public Schools Facebook, it's very active. Whenever there's a school, whenever they don't cancel schools for snow, all the teachers are there, and the teachers are very vocal there. But when it came down to starting schools later, it seemed like the teachers' union was worked up about it, but there wasn't a peep from the teachers about it.
You're absolutely right. In fact, the union had to back off on it, and they ended up being neutral and not opposing the governor's executive order because their membership, rank and file teachers, were so enthusiastic about, we want this.
Right.
Because a lot of us have extra jobs during the summer. A lot of us want to get our batteries fully recharged. A lot of us don't like this creep back into August. And
it just seemed like an odd battle for the union to fight because it's sort of like, they looked behind them when they were leading the charge and there was no one there.
Yeah.
And then I think, to John's point, because we sat down when I guess someone said, we're going to have to find the extra days, we both kind of got the calendar out and we did it pretty easily.
Well, school after Labor Day and air conditioning in Baltimore County and Baltimore City schools have one common target, and that is to make life better for the kids. And that's what I concentrate on. And a lot of my fellow elected officials try to protect their colleagues, wherever they might be, from any kind of criticism. And I'm not so constrained. I'm there saying, guys, you got elected to do a job, so get going, do the job.
It's an easy one. It's common sense, I think, at some point. As a parent, it was a pain. We were going back in the middle of August.
And they have the added value of being wildly popular with Marylanders, and so for the life of me, I can't understand the pushback, which is always troubling to me because, that now they're not particularly upset with me for school after Labor Day. They're very upset with Governor Hogan, and all he did was publish the executive order at my request. I say, goodness gracious, send them back to me, Governor, if you want them to be mad at me. I'm sorry that I put you in the middle.
Yeah, just send them back to you and then lower the voting age to 10.
Yeah.
You'd be elected in a landslide.
Yeah, well, it's all for the good. It's good. It's going to be good for the state. It's good for young families, good for teachers, and anybody that wants to go up to Baltimore County and check in on these schools up there and contrast them with what you have down here in Anne Arundel County, it's night and day as far as how the county here in Anne Arundel has taken care of its school facilities, taken care of its kids, and how they've been abandoned and neglected up there in Baltimore, a seemingly rich county or a county that has resources like Anne Arundel, but just a different form of leadership.
But is it also does it come down to the legislatures that kind of push for something? For example, I think about county executive or county representative, county rep Kathy Vitale.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she was a huge proponent or a huge advocate, of course, of Serena Park and the schools up there. And if you look at that in Anne Arundel County, you look at the schools that are being rebuilt or renovated. I don't know if it's a coincidence that their areas. I think Ed Riley is a huge advocate back down in South County, and then on the state level with the representatives. But I mean, do you think that also the money that's allocated to certain schools and certain districts has to do with the representatives who are there, kind of advocating for it and pushing it?
Well, that obviously is important, and then you get partisan politics, like are they Republicans or Democrats?
Right.
But the key difference for Anne Arundel is you've got someone like this Alex Shostakovich, I call him. I mean, he is just an absolute game changer because he's so persuasive on the merits of these window box units, and also on, when he advocates something new that it's going to be taken care of. It's not just going to fall apart over the first 10 years of its existence. So I think it's it's partly, I guess, the politics of the county, but a county like Baltimore is a huge Democratic county. We have a Democratic legislature, and there's no reason why they shouldn't have taken care of climate control. They just didn't do it. And we're not talking just a few kids. We're talking probably 30,000 kids up there right now, as we speak, who go to school in unair conditioned. And because of the new construction, you can't open the windows, so they don't have any air circulation.
Well, I guess my point I'm getting at kind of delicately is, do you have a problem with schools that are in Baltimore that you would not have if they were in Howard County or Montgomery County or parts of Anne Arundel, saying that these are areas that tend to be wealthier, and I guess I'm getting too whiter.
Yeah, but Baltimore County is a wealthy county.
All right.
And so I don't think it's that. I think it is partly the leadership, but it's not a resource issue. It's not a money issue. It's just the people elected to offices in those counties, are they going to get the job done? And Baltimore County, they've dropped the ball. Baltimore City, they're trying to move forward, and the governor and I are helping them with some
Baltimore
additional
County and Baltimore
support.
City have two different issues, I guess, if you will, going through that again. I mean, I think, different challenges, I guess, in getting it accomplished.
Yeah, but I tell people all over the state, our problems are not going to be solved by more money. It's going to be solved by political leadership and will and sound, moderate oversight and maintenance and administration and planning. It's not always money.
Well, it's funny because we were talking about somebody, because we were talking about New England a little bit before, but I mean, I look at states like Connecticut or Massachusetts, and these are cities that are relatively wealthy, and there's some poverty-stricken areas in those states. And Maryland is certainly, we're the wealthiest state in the country, but if you look at the Eastern Shore, we talked about Western Maryland, and then Baltimore City, you have areas that are really poor. That have unique needs that you don't see in Central Maryland, in Montgomery County, Howard County, most of Prince George's County, Anne Arundel, but there's some. If you go to the Eastern Shore, I mean, there's some unique problems that they have out there, and that they have the same ones that they have in rural Western Maryland, in Garrett County, Washington County, and those are areas that voted for Trump in the election. But I think something like 90% of Maryland's population is in the I-95 corridor between Baltimore and D.C. So I mean, you're right. Money doesn't solve everything.
Yeah, let me just make it very plain to people. This is not an issue of resources. Even the areas of poverty where there's a lot of economic challenge, and I'm the first person to say we should take care of areas of the state that have economic challenges. I've been all over the state in every nook and cranny, so I am a big cheerleader for Western Maryland and the Eastern Shore and parts of Southern Maryland and Baltimore City. And I agree with you, even in places like Montgomery and Baltimore County, there are pockets of poverty. But what we're talking about in Maryland is more a failure of leadership than it is of and management. Leadership and management than it is a lack of resources. And maybe it's just because I'm the comptroller, but I'll be dragged kicking and screaming out of my office someday by the voters, and I will never deviate from that this is not about money. This is about, can you do your own job?
Doing your own job. You've been arguably the most visible comptroller around. Perhaps not the most flamboyant. Yeah.
Mr. Schaefer.
You might be running in third place for that flamboyant.
I give out gold coins, though.
Yes, you do. I do have one. Of those. It's a prominent place on my.
How do you get one of those?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's
performance based, Tim. So don't.
You got to see how it works when you get pulled over by a state trooper. Not at all. It doesn't get you anywhere.
I never get tickets.
But what is the future? I know we've got to get you out of here in a few minutes, but you're out there. I mean, I follow your Facebook page, and you probably should. Comptroller Peter Franchot is on Facebook. I follow you on Twitter. You're everywhere. You were at the Harriet Tubman opening this weekend. You were someplace today. I mean, I know you did an interview on R&R the other day. You're always going. Are you looking for? Are you running in 2018 or 2022? Perhaps.
Well, I'm running for re-election in June of 2018 is the primary, and then the general election. I'm going to run for re-election to comptroller. And I thank everybody who, urges me to run for higher office, but I'm perfectly made for this position. I've got a great connection with the public. It's a thin thread, but I'm out there, as you say, a lot, and people understand that I'm accessible. They can buttonhole me and say they didn't get their tax return or they had some screw up somewhere, and I can at least be there to hear what they have to say. And I find that
that's 90% of customer service is just listening to the problem.
And someone mentioned calling our agency. We just put in a new call center out over in Salisbury, and it helps us answer phones from all around the state, where our goal is to have a live, friendly, professional voice on the phone within 40 seconds. We're not there yet, but it's close. It's within a couple of minutes now. Try calling the IRS.
I did.
As you noted, Tim, they've got some problems as far as
I kept saying, "Where is my money?" And she goes, "I have no idea. I don't know how to fix this. Is there anything else I can help you with?"
Yes.
Like, you have not helped me with anything yet.
Yeah, that's the key. We want someone to answer the phone, but also be able to get results. So,
have you empowered a lot of your senior managers within the various departments to resolve issues, or does it?
Yes, and I think this is just obvious management 101 to your listeners. But if anyone ever does get in charge of an executive agency like this agency, where we have 1,100 employees, the key thing is to empower your directors so that they can work independently almost, although within your parameters, to make the place operate efficiently. And I've got some very skilled managers, and I've told them that, I'm on their side. I'm going to get the resources for them to be able to do their job, but I'm not going to get in their way and micromanage everything. Right. And I'm definitely not going to come in as a new comptroller 10 years ago and say, guys, I think you kind of screwed things up, and I'm going to give you a new vision. That doesn't work.
You're not going to trump your way into office.
Got it. Yeah, exactly. I think that's a big error, but I'll stay out of that situation. But for me, the key was coming in and saying to the senior staff here, look, I'm going to be on your side. We're going to get the resources. We're going to get everything stable. I'm not William Donald Schaefer. I'm completely different. And then after you have that relationship, you go and say, okay, here are some things that I really want. I want the 3 R's. I want the taxpayers respected and responded to, and I want them to get results. And everybody then is willing to go along with you because they view you as an asset that is on their side.
Well, I always said as
pretty
a manager,
simplistic.
I've had to manage people before, and where I've said my job is to clear the way for you to do your job. So if something is impeding you, you tell me and I'll remove it. And, I mean, I sometimes failed at it, but that was my job, was to clear a path for them. And after that, I said, well, I expect once I do that you are to do your job best to your ability, because you don't have any excuses not to. And I would look at my bosses and say, just clear a path for me, and if I don't perform, then that's on me.
Yeah, a lot of people come in and say, I'm going to change things I got elected to do, or I got appointed, or I got hired to do something different. And if you put the cart before the horse, you get the senior folks not on your side. My advice to folks is avoid that at all costs.
And they have the institutional memory, too. I mean, they're the bridge between administrations.
Yes.
I think people come down on the bureaucrats saying that they burrow their way in.
Do you guys ever tell any jokes or anything? Or is it always like, man, this is pretty sober conversation?
Well, generally we're drinking when we do this.
Yeah, quick. Did you come directly from the General Assembly into this office?
Yes. So
what possessed you to leave leave that and to run for, this is, as you said, against William Donald Schaefer, who was arguably very entrenched and...
Honestly, I needed to get out. The legislature is a kind of addictive place because everybody pays attention and holds the door for you. But I'd been there 20 years. It's a part-time job. And as my wife said, when are you going to stop that hobby? The legislature. And so she was delighted when I said I'm running against William Donald Schaefer because she said he's going to kick your rear end. And
he has a taste for the jugular.
Yeah, he's going to really clobber you, and you're going to come back, and you'll be in the private sector and be a normal person. And I ended up winning. And
we were talking about that before. That
was a shock to her.
He was relentless to Glendenning.
He got a lot of those elections.
Yes.
When Mike Panelides won Annapolis, I remember the rumor has it that his father said, "Oh shit, now what?"
Yeah, yeah. Well, my wife actually said, I think the conversation was, "Dear, I'm now the chief fiscal officer of the state of Maryland and in charge of the books of the state." And her response was, "Well, God help the state of Maryland if you're in charge, because, our books are not so great right here in the Franchot household." But
I think I married her sister.
Yeah, we've gotten things straightened out a lot, but it's been a great journey for me and great education for me, and I'm, as I said, privileged to be the comptroller of the state.
Okay, when you do run for governor, you're going to do it. You're going to announce on our show, though, right? Yeah.
Good. Okay.
You heard it here first. Okay.
So that's a definite maybe.
Yeah.
He just shot me with his thumb and fork.
Have you gotten the governor medallions made up yet? Or are you still working on the comptroller ones?
No, but I gave one to the Governor Hogan the other day because, as everybody knows, I work very comfortably and well with him. So he had to run back into his inner sanctum back there and find one of his medallions and bring it out and give it to me.
Oh, he's got medallions?
Oh, yeah. He's got them in little
medallions.
Yeah, little velvet sacks.
All we did was steal that tape dispenser from his desk.
I wanted a medallion.
Yeah.
See,
well,
all right, we need to work on that.
It's been a pretty good interview, so maybe Vicky can help me find one.
We're going to call up Hannah and see whether we can.
Vicky's checking through her pocket to see if
look
she's got.
At that!
Oh my God, we got to go. Come on, look at that.
Yeah, this is
you,
a
Vicky.
genuine, much coveted comptroller medallion.
Oh, look at
I
that.
give it to Marylanders who make a difference.
Let's do that thing where you hand it to us and we're both looking at the picture.
Yeah. There
we
and
go.
we're pointing. All right, there you go, right there.
There it is.
This is compelling audio. Look at that.
There you go.
Thank you,
Yep.
John. You got screwed.
I got. It's nice. They're
Wow.
nice.
Yeah.
So when you get pulled over, it's hefty too.
Yeah.
It's like the size of like the old school silver dollar. So when I get pulled over, I can say, "Hold on a second.
Yeah.
I think not."
Well, you're on your own there.
I'll tell you, we do want to thank you, Mr. Franchot, Comptroller
Listen to that.
Franchot, for
It's got some-
spending some time with us.
Yeah.
Very interesting, and and I do know the Speaker Bush, and I'm not sure about President Miller, but listen to this. But boy, let's get this Taxpayer Protection Act going. It's just so common sense in my mind. I think in probably everybody's mind that this needs to happen. Thank you for explaining everything that you've done and taking the time, and good luck certainly in your election coming up.
And you're on Facebook, right?
Yes.
Do you know who else is on Facebook?
Who?
We are.
Wow.
So, sir, what we need you to do is to find us on Facebook because we've got a page and we've got a group.
I only have 9,500 friends, though. Is that okay if I bring them over with
Better
me?
than us, yeah.
Okay.
Do you kind of stalk at night and see who's doing what?
No,
See
I
what your
don't do
girlfriends are
that
doing?
because then that would imply that I actually get on and write my own stuff at 3 in the morning. No, I do not do that.
And we're on Twitter at I in Annapolis for John, and I'm at Tim Hamilton 47, and you can find us at MD Krabs Podcast.
Good.
And Mr. Franchot, what's yours? Vicky, Comptroller of Maryland.
Comptroller
Facebook.
Peter Franchot, Comptroller of Maryland on Facebook, and the Twitter account is listed on there as well.
Great. And then you can subscribe to us on iTunes and on Google Play and iHeartRadio. And I got my new Alexa, and I just sold her to play us on the other night. It's just great. You got any Alexa, sir? They're fantastic.
Wow.
It's
an Amazon thing. So, all right. Well, let's call it a day.
Okay. Thank you, sir. And go testify or whatever you're going to do.
Thank you very much.
And that was Peter Franchot. He was fun.
Yeah,
he actually was. I thought, to be honest with you, when you told me that he was coming on, I didn't know much about him except that, I'm thinking, no, we're going to talk taxes. This sounds like fun.
A bean counter.
Right.
Really compelling stuff, John.
Yeah, he was. But no, he was. You know what I like about him? I always liked him because he has never towed any kind of party line, and he's never actually played the game that we see so many of the elected officials play. I mean, he's pretty outspoken. I've always liked that about him.
I don't remember his successors too well, or predecessors.
Donald Schaefer, of course.
Well, Schaefer and
that's the way they're supposed to be.
But I mean, Franchot is everywhere. I follow him on Facebook. I follow him on Twitter, and he is always out
in the business community. And that's what it's all about. It's all about, revenue and bringing in tax, whether it's sales tax and all these other taxes. But he is always out there. And always campaigning. He dodged the question a little bit.
We dodged it completely. But, is he going to run for governor? He's been laying that groundwork for a long time, if that's what you believe. And I kind of believe it.
He's like the political ISIS of Maryland. He's playing the long game.
Well, no, he is playing a long game. He has been for a while. But, matter of fact, I think he was when all the criticism that Hogan had gotten about the school days. I think he wanted that criticism because he's the one that he's been talking about that for years.
Sure,
yeah, and that's been that's a pretty popular position to take. It's only unpopular with the teachers union.
Well, the
teachers love it.
Tenacious. You look at the air conditioning in the Baltimore City and Baltimore County schools. Mm-hmm. I'm curious to see what his next move may be.
Crusade. Well, he's picking up topics that I think that kind of resonate. He's not a populist, but these are common sense things. And talking about common sense, you look at the legislation that he was talking about that gives them the police power to shut down the tax cheats
and the frauds.
Right. And to me, look, whenever you have a piece of legislation that someone's promoting and they're like, oh, this is fantastic, and you sit there and you go, yeah, it is pretty common sense. Why in hell would someone vote against this, or why would there be any opposition? Then you talk to the other side and you're like, oh, I get it. I got to be honest with you, I can't see a downside to this. And we haven't talked to anybody because that would involve research. But still,
he had no problem, calling out the legislature, saying, yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
there is no downside to this. And the thing is, it's not and that whole legislation thing is, it's not that the comptroller's office doesn't have any police power. They do. They're the people that are arresting the people with the non-liquor tax bottles and the cigarette tax bottles. And they actually do charge things. So, they do have, in some instances, the ability to charge individuals.
But this is a pretty important one because the technology has made it such that, I was joking about this during the interview, but this really actually does bug me. Is that Bridget from Card Services? You have someone, and they know who this person is. They shut his companies down, and he opens up new companies, and he doesn't care. He just thumbs his nose at the federal regulations and do not call. But you're talking about probably hundreds of millions of calls, maybe a day, because these auto dialers can do that. But they can't even track these people down, and that's just annoying. But it's relatively innocuous. But when you talk about the tax fraud, I can't. We're joking about it. I can't tell you the hassle it was for the better part of 2 years of trying to unravel that Gordian knot, which was my money that the feds owed me, and the onus was on me to get that cleared up. They had no interest whatsoever in helping. The IRS was utterly unhelpful. They couldn't have cared less. The people I talked to were absolutely ambivalent to the fact that we were owed this money.
Well, that tells me that they have no control over what this identity theft and this fraud is.
And that's my point, is that if this is a serious thing, is that it's become so prevalent over the last 3 or 4 years because you can submit 10,000, 20,000 tax returns at a clip, and even if two get through,
that's the difference between me and a fraudster. I get like $89 back, and I'm like doing the happy dance.
I know, but
fraudster's looking for a couple million.
Yeah, well, but they just have one of them go through, and that's all it takes. But you've got to kind of jump on this early because I think in legislation, you don't care when it doesn't affect you. And I got to be honest, there's so many things like that where the amount of hassle. And by the way, they were using my wife's social security number to open up credit cards, so I had to deal with that whole mess.
I use her number all the time.
Well, that's what she gets for not covering it up. But I had to track down all the credit cards, and again, the onus was on me. I had to fill police reports, and I had to sit there and I was furious with them because the people who were the tax cheats used her credit card to open up use her social security number to open up all these credit cards, and I had to go to all these companies like Best Buy and Sears, and I had to go, and they if I didn't fill out the paperwork correctly, they said, well, you have to. I'm like, well, wait a minute. Someone can call up or just walk in and open up a credit card, yet I've got to spend literally 20 or 30 hours per store to unravel this. And there was 7 or 8 stores. It was another couple hundred hours just doing that. So when I see that legislature kind of shrugs and said, we think it's fine, that just aggravates me.
And then they can't do anything about it.
Who, the legislature?
Well, yeah, at that point, you do all the work. Say, you pretty much hand them a case. Here's where they open the credit cards. Here's the credit, and they won't do anything about it. It's crazy that got snowballed or stonewalled, whatever the hell you want to call it, is just absolutely absurd.
Well, the customer service, he said, they're up to the point that you're getting through to someone in 2 minutes, and I know that sounds like a little thing, but as someone,
it's huge.
It's huge. Even to call the IRS, I was on hold literally 3-4 hours at a time. So I put it on speakerphone, like as soon as I got up in the morning, and I'd shower and like in a blind panic because I thought if they answer while I'm in the shower, I'd be screaming at them naked which is not uncommon in my household, by the way. But I mean, to have him just be so conscious of the customer. I mean, it's not like I'm kissing his ass, mainly because, he's got my taxes. But he's a good guy. He's overall, I think he really cares about the citizens and the consumer.
No, he really is. I mean, he's been in the office 10
years.
10 years.
And then he was a legislator, forever before that.
He knows the workings of state government. And, and he's out there. I mean, the guy is approachable. I jokingly said, how is it that you get your job and you're able to get into the Apple store and out real quick like that? When I ran into him in the Apple store in the mall one time. But he's, when I was with R&R,
But think about that. He's got someone working there. He goes, yeah, I got to get in and out. They're like, sir, there's a 2-hour wait. He goes, okay, great. Give me more time to think about your taxes.
Okay.
Well, take a look at your iPhone there. You got your password?
But, yeah, no, when I was with R&R, he would come into the studio and at 7 o'clock. That's no problem. He's there late at night. And I'm really excited. We need to get up to Baltimore and check out that place that we talked about, the sort of market house up by Hopkins.
Oh, yeah.
Our house, I think, is called. Yeah. Might be interesting. But, the guy's a wealth of information. I appreciate him taking the time. Yep. And actually, to come talk to us, he was zooming in on his car. And then he zoomed right out because he had to be at another.
Yeah, he was fun. Who do we have next week?
Next week, we're going to talk pot.
Oh, yeah, we're going to talk pot. That was a fun one. So that's with the National Cannabis Festival, which is on April 22nd.
April 22nd.
They want it on April 420, but I guess it just didn't happen.
And it's purposely that they did this. Is they're waiting for, because 420 will be in 2 more years, and they want to get these... they want to get all the wrinkles out of running the festival down. Which is, and that, 420 will be a huge...
It'll be big.
Be an amazing thing, but it's... and they are going to send us some free tickets, and we got to figure out a way to give them away.
Right. Oh, yeah, we'll do that. We'll do those giveaways. And then we're going to have some...
Probably on Facebook or Twitter. So if you're interested in tickets to the Cannabis Festival on April 22nd...
You should probably follow us there.
Like us and follow us there.
Yeah, so Facebook, of course, we have our page and we have our group. And we have on Twitter, at MD Krabs Podcast. John's at Annapolis. I'm at Tim Hamilton 47. You can friend us both on Facebook.
Hey, just a real question. And if you like what you're hearing, if you like what we're doing here, send us suggestions, certainly at info@themarylandcrabs.com. But if you like what you're doing, subscribe. We'll come right to your, on iTunes. We'll come right to your phone.
Don't have to do anything. Every Thursday at noon, it'll be there, boom, waiting for you like a fat little pigeon.
Yeah, give us a rating. Tell your friends about it too. Don't keep it a secret. We don't want it. And the more the more ratings we get, the higher we go in the charts on iTunes, and that gets us I think a gold sticker or something.
Oh, I like stickers.
Yeah, stickers are nice. We can put them on the wall and make it sound a little bit deader in here.
Yeah, you were in John's bachelor pad, which is just this empty room with nothing on the walls and
echo.
Empty cans in the corner. So anyway, that does it for us this week, and we will see you next week when we talk pot or weed or ganja or whatever the kiddos are calling it now. But until then, thanks.
This has been the Maryland Krabs Podcast with Tim Hamilton and John Fernay. Sure to follow them in all the regular places, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and online at themarylandcrabs.com. Take a moment to rate us on iTunes. Now, get the hell out of my kitchen. Seriously, go!
You're still here? It's over. Go home.